I don't know how many of you guys out there are like me, in the sense that the book series of A Song of Ice and Fire was not your introduction to the universe. I know for myself, and I'm sure a lot of others out there, that the Game of Thrones TV series was the first look into this universe, and for a time, it was actually my only view of things until I eventually decided to go to the source of it all. A Song of Ice and Fire, the book series, and the television show are honestly vastly different mediums when it comes to the world, characters, and plot lines, to the point where if you put them side by side at some points, it can almost be hard to believe that they're meant to be the same thing. So many storylines are altered and character aspects just removed altogether. And when I ponder on these things, I can't help but think of Tyrion Lannister. In Game of Thrones, Tyrion has to be one of the most loved characters in the story, and it's not surprising why. Outside of the amazing performance that is given to us by Peter Dinklage, Tyrion is definitely presented as an underdog within the story. A man constantly looked down on, belittled, and abused from the moment he's born, purely based on something he could not control. He was born a dwarf, and his birth killed his mother Joanna, earning the ire of his father and sister forever. His very existence is treated by most of the world as some ill omen, and many people believe him to be a disgusting monster. But we quickly see that Tyrion is so much more than that. Tyrion is intelligent, insightful, and very sympathetic as a character. He tries to help people that are disadvantaged like him. He gives advice to Jon Snow, who's a bastard, and he tries to make life easier for Bran, who lost the use of his legs thanks to his siblings. Tyrion tries to bring a level of morality to the table that we see lacking in the other members of his family in these early parts of the story. He tries to do good when he's made Hand of the King, tries to get Joffrey under control, defending Sansa from abuse, and making political moves that could ensure his family's survival. It's things like this, where despite his family being portrayed as the main antagonistic force for a majority of the show, that you can't help but root for Tyrion Lannister. A guy who doesn't really seem to be out for himself and is just trying to make sure his family survives. A man who just wants to be acknowledged and seen for more than the circumstances that he was born under, while the world just continues to beat him down, while he tries in vain to be accepted by it. He's very much presented as a tortured soul who's good at heart and could thrive if just given the opportunity and respect that he deserves. The first few seasons of Game of Thrones are pretty accurate to the books, for the most part, and this stuff does hold true for Tyrion to a certain extent. However, one of the key factors of his character that is lost even in these early seasons of the show, and especially in the later ones, is that Tyrion Lannister is not a good person. He is not this guy, desperately trying everything to avoid loss of life, and unnecessary violence like he is in the later seasons of Game of Thrones. In fact, I'd like to bring up something present in the books and the show that really drives this home, and that is Tyrion being the son of Tywin Lannister. And I mean this in more than just the biological sense. Before Tyrion kills Tywin, his father tells the imp that he is no son of his, to which Tyrion responds that he is his son, and always has been. The books take this a bit further, and Tyrion says not only is he Tywin's son, he is Tywin himself written small. Tywin is not a good man by any means. He is uncompromising, abusive, hypocritical, and just brutal as an individual altogether. And this is exemplified the best in the way he wages war. Tywin is known for being especially cruel when it comes to conflict, and his armies are known for their brutality, especially when it comes to the small folk and women. In the show, Tyrion is presented as this man who wants to avoid harm where it's unnecessary, but in the books, he actually co-signs a lot of his father's war methods. A part of this stems from him trying to live up to Tywin and embody his father. There's this chapter in A Clash of Kings where Tyrion is Hand of the King, and a river lord comes to the capital to speak with him because his lands have suffered as a result of his father attacking them. His lands have been pillaged, his small folk killed, and his wife was assaulted. Show Tyrion probably would have tried to help this guy in some way, but in the books, he essentially shrugs this off. He tells Bronn, who told him about the River Lord coming to see him, that what happened is just war, that it's natural for innocents to get caught in the crossfire and suffer unimaginable trauma as a result of conflict. He acts like talking to this guy and finding some respectable way to address his concerns is kind of pointless and beneath him. As if what he's going through, along with his people, is just a simple factor of life at war. But that's a load of crap, because even in the books, Stannis, Renly, and Robb, they don't wage war like the Lannisters do. And while in the books, yes, Robb's men have done some pretty deplorable things, that's typically when they're not under his guidance, and so far from him that he can't reprimand them if he wanted to. Out of everyone, the Lannisters are just brutal, and they're known for being so, and they refuse to do anything about it. Tyrion tells Bronn to set this Riverlord up in a room and give him a new pair of boots, as if that's going to make him calm down after everything he and his people have endured, and him being essentially blown off by the acting hand of the king. We never get a follow-up on if Tyrion actually bothers to meet this guy, but I think it's unlikely that even if he did, that anything productive came out of it. And this is funny to me, because in Clash of Kings, Tyrion at this point in the books, after being named to the position as Hand by his father, declares that he's going to King's Landing and is going to dispense justice. He gets rid of people like Janos Slynt because he killed a baby and her mom, he imprisons Maester Pycelle, and brides people to keep an eye on his cruel sister Cersei. But each of these acts doesn't really resolve anything in the city. Janos just becomes Jon's problem, while Cersei, the one who's giving him orders, is still allowed to roam free. Joffrey remains on the Iron Throne, and he's terrible as ever, and he makes an enemy out of Pycelle. The men he bribed to watch his sister aren't even loyal to him, they're loyal to Littlefinger, and his own men, like Bronn, are just as cutthroat as the people he tried to get rid of. He fails to do any real justice, or make King's Landing or the lands outside of it any safer. And when someone comes to him with a reasonable grievance, he just brushes it off like it doesn't matter. But Tyrion says in the books that he can scheme with the best of them, and it comes off that some of the stuff he's doing in King's Landing isn't really about doing the right thing. His morality really seems to be more of a mask than anything else, and what he's really trying to do is stroke his ego. And Tyrion even admits in Clash of Kings that what he's doing is just a mummer show of justice, false, with no real positive impact on the people around him. King's Landing is still corrupt, and he continues to feed into it. Now, this isn't to say that Tyrion is dumb, because he is still an intelligent man, but the narrative the show pushes about him being a good one, just on the wrong side of things at first, isn't really true. While yes, he can be sympathetic towards others, Tyrion can also be cruel and selfish, sometimes unnecessarily so, and he can have desires that, while stemming from a place that you may understand, are still ultimately morally unacceptable. Something I can't help but think about when it comes to Tyrion is his relationship with Sansa Stark in the books, and how much it really differs from the show. In both, Tyrion is forced to marry Sansa, after the Lannisters uncover a Tyrell plot to marry her off to one of their sons, Loras in the show and Willis in the books. In the show, Tyrion seems disgusted at the prospect of marrying a child, one who his family has tormented for ages, and when it comes time to consummate their marriage, he doesn't even give her a second thought before walking out. It's deplorable to him, this idea of getting in bed with a child who's been forced into this marriage and already been subjected to enough cruelty. But in the books, it's actually a bit different. Tyrion doesn't shy away from Sansa when they get married, and actually isn't all the way appalled by the match. In fact, Tyrion even tells Sansa that he does want to sleep with her. They even go as far as to undress themselves and get in bed, but nothing actually happens between them, thankfully. Though it is made very clear in the scene that Tyrion does find her physically appealing, to say the very least. Even so, Tyrion does end up telling Sansa that despite his desires, he won't touch her unless she wants him to. Then Sansa raises the question of, what if she never wants to touch him? This seems to hurt Tyrion, and this is one of those moments where I applaud George and his characterization, because you can understand why Tyrion is hurt. Because at the core of Tyrion's character is someone who just wants to be wanted. He knows he's not the most attractive, and losing his nose in the Battle of the Blackwater only made things worse. But he still hopes that someone will look beyond that and desire him for who he is. And I think that's something a lot of people in the real world can relate to. But even so, while you can sympathize with that pain, it doesn't change how messed up this particular desire is for Tyrion. Sansa at this point is a 12-year-old girl who has only suffered because of his family. They cut off her father's head, they kept her as a political hostage, and Joffrey commands people to hit her just because he feels like it. Now she's being forced to marry a grown man she barely even knows. So while you can understand Tyrion to an extent, is this really a moment where you can say you feel bad for him? Is this really a moment where he deserves sympathy over Sansa? Can you even still call him a good person? Because while he places a value on consent, he still expressed a desire for a child. And even after being refused, and being faced with the reality that Sansa will most likely never want to be with him, Tyrion still wants her. And he doesn't just want her, he also wants Winterfell too. Tyrion in the show isn't this desperate or ambitious like his book counterpart. Even though in the show we get moments where he pesters Tywin for Casterly Rock and gets frustrated when he's denied it, it still feels like the show undersells how badly Tyrion wants things. It's a huge part of his character in the books. He wants power, he wants acknowledgement, he wants love, and perhaps most importantly, he wants to feel tall. And it leads him to do very heinous things within the story as well, just for the sake of feeling powerful. In A Song of Ice and Fire, there is a narrative that is constantly pushed that the youngest son of Tywin is a spiteful monster. Not only that, he's a curse upon his family. And in the TV series, this narrative is something that is frowned upon, and they make an effort to show how unreasonable and unfair this assumption is when it comes to Tyrion Lannister. How it has no foundation aside from prejudice and hate, and Tyrion actually is a pretty chill guy when you get to know him. And while this is also somewhat true in the books, that these beliefs are unnecessary and ill-founded and cruel, for all of the times Tyrion is unfairly demonized by society, Tyrion also has no problem living up to this unsavory image that people have built up of him. A great example of this is, in the books, Cersei catches wind that Tyrion has a woman at court, and in an attempt to get leverage over him, she begins looking for Shae. She ends up catching a woman named Alayea instead, believing that she's the one in bed with Tyrion. In the show, this was Ross, and the interactions go very differently. In the show, Tyrion simply says that he'll find a way to free her, then tells Cersei that one day he'll get revenge on her. She'll think she's safe, and her joy will turn to ashes in her mouth. But in the books, it's actually a bit worse. A lot worse, I should say. He does threaten to hurt Cersei, but he also takes it a step further. He tells Cersei that no harm will come to Alayea, and if it does, then whatever's done to her will also happen to Tommen, who is a child, mind you. He's not even 10 when this happens. Tyrion says he'll beat and violate him if any of that is done to her prisoner, because he knows how brutal the Lannisters can be. And he does all of this while doing his best to emulate their father, Tywin. He doesn't try diffusing the situation, telling Cersei that she has the wrong person, or try to find a way to ensure her safety without antagonizing his sister. He doesn't appreciate this interaction, so he tries to lord himself over Cersei, making her feel helpless and afraid, small, while threatening to do vile things to his own nephew out of spite. He just widens the existing rift between him and his sister, reinforcing every terrible thought she's already had about him as well, and guaranteeing some confrontation down the line in the process. And this isn't even the end of Tyrion's spiteful ways, and the harm he does to others as a result. Shae and Tyrion have a very different relationship in the books. They are not in love like the show tries to portray them. In the books, Shae is an 18-year-old girl who Tyrion pays to be with him, and he knows she only wants him for his money, but Tyrion likes to pretend that Shae actually loves him. This comes to a boiling point when Joffrey dies and Tyrion is put on trial. Like the show, Shae testifies against him, but instead of being a willing participant who's looking to get back at him like a jaded ex, Shae is actually forced into her testimony. Cersei makes her go against Tyrion, and later on, when Tyrion escapes his cell and goes to confront Tywin and he finds Shae in his bed, she doesn't attack him in a fit of rage like she did in the show. Instead, she cries and tells him that she didn't have a choice, and that the only reason that she was here was because his father scared her. Shae at this moment is just a scared girl, and like the small folk has just been caught in the crossfire of the High Lords and their political schemes. But instead of acknowledging this, Tyrion just kills her. He strangles her to death, and it is not an act of self-defense. And it's not some regrettable accident either. It's cold-blooded murder because he feels betrayed and had his delusions shattered. Another point where he really diverges from his show counterpart is actually before he kills Shae. When Jaime sets him free, he tells him something about his first wife, Tysha. Tysha was a common girl who Tyrion married, that Tywin told him was a woman hired by Jaime to pretend to be in love with him. To drive this home, Tywin let his men have her, then forced Tyrion to do the same after it was all said and done. Tyrion spent his entire life believing that no one could ever truly love him, but after Jaime sets him free, he tells him that Tysha wasn't paid to love him. She was genuinely just a girl who was in love with Tyrion for who he was, and not what gold she could get out of him. This revelation turns Tyrion against his family, and in rage he tells Jaime that he actually did kill Joffrey, even though it's a lie, and then says that Cersei has been cheating on him the entire time that he's been gone. He leaves his family as their enemy, and swears to be the monster they all think he is. He's going to burn House Lannister down, and from where he is in the books, perhaps the whole of Westeros too. He goes to Essos to support Daenerys, and at one point on his journey to her, he says he'll do whatever she wants as long as she gives him the right to force himself on Cersei and kill her afterwards. He ends up traveling with young Griff, who claims to be the son of Elia and Rhaegar, and Tyrion actually convinces him to attack Westeros and take the Iron Throne instead of meeting with Daenerys to join her, which is bound to cause conflict down the line. At this point, Tyrion just wants chaos and destruction, fully playing into his role of the imp. Tyrion Lannister is not a good person, but I can't help but appreciate the complexity of Tyrion, because there are aspects to his character you can resonate with. There are parts of him worth sympathizing with. Tyrion is very much a victim in this world. I would venture to say that he's even a self-fulfilling prophecy. He kept being treated like a monster until he became one. The people of Westeros essentially orchestrated the rise of their own worst enemy because they wouldn't allow him to be anything else. But at the same time, as much as he is a victim, Tyrion had no problem playing into these fears and building up the monster these people had made up in their heads. Tyrion says to Jon to wear who he is like armor, so that it can never be used to hurt him. This is what Tyrion does, but he also uses what he is not only as armor, but a blade. He lashes out when angry, when he feels belittled, or wants to feel tall and proud. Or, like his father, Tywin, he chooses to be cruel and then it comes back to bite him later on. It's a vicious cycle where he's torn down, then he tears down others, and everyone suffers as a result, because no one is willing to let sleeping dogs lie. And that's the truth of Tyrion. And while he definitely is a terrible person, he is a great character. In my opinion, at least. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, give me your thoughts down below, and I will see you all next time.